Language learning is hard. I know, bold statement. Anyone who's tried learning a language, no matter how quote-unquote easy the language is, can attest to that. And anyone who tells you otherwise or that they have an easy way out, maybe check their social medias, see if they're selling or otherwise profiting from these get fluent quick schemes. I do think that in current year, it is the easiest it has ever been to learn a new language. Technology and human innovation, of course, are always progressing, but I think the accessibility of information and useful tools is the main thing. You want to learn how to grow avocados from seeds? You got countless sources on how to do it, should you do it, what are the best practices, and what are the results to expect. And if that's not enough, you can just pop over to online communities and ask people who have done it before. It is as easy as it gets. So yeah, if you want to learn a language, there are plenty of sources for ideas and help and first steps, but the choice can be too much sometimes, and it might even cause decision paralysis, which means you'll not even start learning in the first place. I can tell from experience that I have a colleague at work who's been subscribed to several German language learning channels for I think 3 years now, and he's never started the first step because it's just so hard as an adult to put the time and effort into it. And when you have all these conflicting ideas and thoughts and whatnot, then it can make it even worse and you're just gonna say, maybe tomorrow, I don't know. As a quick introduction, I'm a 26-year-old software engineer. I have no experience in linguistics or language learning or anything like that. I've just been a big fan since a pretty young age. I started learning my first language during COVID era, like additional language. Of course, I've spoken before. But during COVID era, I was starting to get interested in language learning. And I learned a language, not relevant for right now, maybe in a future video. But I've learned for 3 years. I've put in the time, I've put in the work. I've been doing immersion practice and vocabulary and all that stuff. And I can tell you right now that I know almost nothing of the language. I was very bad at learning. I was very bad at motivation. And basically all of it has been forgotten. But then, around August 2023, I started learning German. German was my second language learning journey. And it's been going great as of current day of recording, which is September 2024. I'm doing pretty well. I'm speaking well, reading well, consuming content. I'll be flying over to Germany in a bit. According to my teacher, I'm around B1 level. And a pretty comfy B1 level at that. Sorry to disappoint you, but yeah, you're not getting to fluent or C1 in a year unless you're like a savant that's living abroad in a country that speaks the language, and maybe you have a 1981 DeLorean on your side. But for us normal people, it's a long process. So I think that should be your first step, is understanding that it's going to be a long process. So I think that's enough preamble, and let's get to the fun part, which is the software and apps for me in current year of 2024. Okay, time for the elephant in the room. What do I think about Duolingo? That's the most popular and probably most controversial language learning app there is. It's been, ridiculed a lot by language learning teachers as something that is trying to get you to stay in the app and isn't trying to really promote healthy learning habits. And all these things are correct. I'm not here to say Duolingo is amazing. I will say that it is really good at giving you bite-sized pieces of the language when you get started. I can tell you that I was using Duolingo in the start of my language learning journey from August 2023 until about, I want to say November, about 3 months. And it really did work for getting my feet in the water and really starting to get into the vibe of how German works and how German sounds and cases and tenses. But there are some caveats to that. You need to do the same classes a lot of times. You can't just do them once and move on. The repetition is part of the practice. You also can't do it for 5 minutes a day. I know the app tells you can do that. It's a lie. You'll never learn that way. You gotta do like 20-minute sessions for a while. Get the hang of things. Do the listening practices. Do some stuff outside of the class. Maybe Google some words you don't understand. Or try to Google different ways to say the same things. Just so you have a little more exposure outside of the app. And most of all, let go of the streak. When you're done with the effective usage of the app, don't just go in for 5 minutes a day to keep the streak going. Throw it in the garbage, move on. You've got better things to do. Next up is one I actually do use basically every day, is Anki. Anki is very popular amongst language learners. It is not really a language learning app, it's a flashcard app. So basically any topic you need, from language learning to maybe law practice or whatever you need to study for, you got a bunch of user-made decks that are pre-made with questions on one side and answers on the other, or in our case, target language on one side and then source language on the other. Usually you'll find stuff for translation between target language and English. Editor's note, I just realized I literally forgot to mention that you can create your own decks. That's like half the point of Anki. So yeah, you can like make your own deck, add new words as you learn them, and then you can practice them however you see fit. So yeah, that's basically it for now. Back to the video. Now, Anki's great. Anki's really good because it is no nonsense. You can find what you need. I've used it a bunch with like giant verb lists or giant common word lists, and it's great for daily practice, and it gives you the same thing every time. It's good. But the problem is that it gives you the same thing every time. Unlike an app like Duolingo, you're not going to get variations on the same sentences. You're going to get the same thing, so you're going to have to do a little bit outside of it. But it's a better daily drill, I think, than Duolingo. And it also goes very well with another program that's a little more obscure that we'll talk about later. Okay, this one's a little stupid and can be replaced by Anki, but I actually have a Google Sheet, like a note per thing I'm learning from. Say, for example, I'm watching a movie or playing a video game in German. I will have a page where I keep all the new words I learned there, with and without the translation. And then what I do with these pages is I use random.org, which is just a website for randomizing lists or numbers or whatever, and just put in the words. And like you can use Anki instead, because you can just like have a flashcard deck that you're keeping and you're updating every time you're learning a new word. But I don't know, I like the robustness of just like throwing another word on a list and getting it over with. With Anki, you have to open the app, you have to choose the deck, you have to select add a new card, you need to like go through some options. It works, but I'm a very robust person, and to me just having a doc and random.org is good enough. Maybe don't learn from this one. Okay, the next one's going to be pretty obvious, but any content platform you're using that has multi-regional content, so for example, Spotify or Apple Music will have a bunch of target language music. So for example, I'm listening to Nena a bunch or other Neue Deutsche Welle music groups on my drives to work. And for example, YouTube has both language learning channels, which are great. There's plenty of great language learning channels, but there's also a bunch of target language content. So for example, I'm watching this German speedrunner who plays Yu-Gi-Oh games, and he does all his streams in German, so it's really good for listening and hearing about a topic that I'm going to be interested in. So if I ever speak with people in Germany, I can use phrases that I've heard that are related to the topic, so it's really good. Okay, next up is another double feature. Basically, whenever I see a word that the direct translation of seems a little off to me, for example, anything with a phrasal verb or anything that's like slang, I will often not totally rely on just a regular dictionary. What I'll do is I'll use Wiktionary, which is the Wikipedia equivalent for the dictionary, and it gives you etymologies. I think that's really helpful for memorizing, because oftentimes when you understand the logic behind how a word is composed, it's much easier to remember it than just as a string of letters. And the second place I use Reverso Context. Reverso Context gives you a bunch of literary sources in both source and target language, or same sentence. So for example, I write sleep with the fishes from English to German, and I will see actual places where it has been used, and oftentimes in the translated language, it will be something more direct and not something as metaphorical. Okay, this one's a little bit of a hidden gem, but there's this tool called Subs to SRS. It's a really cool, very simple program that does the following. You give it a subtitle file for a movie or a show or whatever, and you provide it with the original clips of the show if you want. You don't have to. And it will generate an Anki deck of the lines from the show. So say, for example, you have this program you're watching, it's in your target language. For example, I'm watching Raumpatrouille. It's a sci-fi show from the 60s from West Germany. And I want to practice not just on any sentences, but on sentences from the show. Because, for example, I want to know more words from the sci-fi lingo. So I use an episode. I put in as the question side my target language, German. And on the source side, I'm using some online tool. I'll also link in the description for automatic translations. And then the other side will be basically a Google Translate of the sentence in front of me. It's not perfect because it's a Google Translate, but it's about as good as you're going to get. And it's really good to spice up your Anki because A, you get to automatically generate it from whatever you want. B, it gets you different sentences. That was exactly the problem with Anki, right? That you always see the same words in the same order. But if you see different sentences from the same show, you will see different contexts where words are said. It also gives you the moments in the episode where the sentence has been said. So it's really good for learning how to pronounce things. Okay, now for a big one, also very popular, is italki. Italki, you might have heard if you've been on YouTube on language learning circles. It's a really good platform for meeting language teachers. It connects students with teachers from all over the world. The teachers will be classified based on their target language you want to learn and source language which they are able to teach you in. So it's really good if you're not particularly fluent in English, or maybe your language expression is better in your native language rather than English. I've been using it a lot, almost since I started. I'd say about 3 months after I started, I went on italki. I found my current teacher, Tati, and she's amazing. And if you're first off, you want to learn German, go to Tati. I'll link below. But in general, great app. It is per class payment, so you pay the teacher, which is good. It means the teacher is getting the money and not just the app. But it isn't free, so you can't just do it all the time every day. I usually do it like once every 2 weeks. It's very affordable compared to in-person classes, so I generally highly recommend it. Now it's time to address the real elephant in the room, and we're not talking about Duolingo anymore. We're talking about ChatGPT and its contemporaries. I think there's a few issues with using them for language learning. For one, they don't see sentences. They see something called lemmas. It's a whole thing. I'll add a short in the description. But in general, sometimes they're not very reliable on understanding how a sentence works. For example, there's a famous case where if you ask it how many R's are in a strawberry, it'll give you very conflicting answers. Also, ChatGPT is very submissive, so if you tell him, I'm pretty sure I'm right, he'll just agree with you. So that's not great in a teacher. I do sometimes use it, for example, for sentence generation. I give it a list of words that I'm learning, and I ask it to generate new sentences with each of them, or generate a paragraph with as many of the words as you can. It's sometimes fun, but the second problem, and the bigger problem, is exactly that, fun. I don't know about you guys, but I'm learning languages to interact with culture, to consume media and literature, to understand other people better. I don't know about you guys, but the moment I go to a large language model and just ask it to generate conversation with me, why am I even learning? Like, the AI knows English. I don't need to learn anything. So I think that for motivation purposes, I kind of stay away from ChatGPT. But again, you can make your own conclusions and use it as much as you want. Okay, and one last source of free immersion is just change the settings on your phone or your computer to your target language. It really doesn't affect you very much because you know where everything is. Like, you know where the camera is, you know where the gallery is. And it's just like free words you see every day. You see them subconsciously. They build up, so that's not bad either. But yeah, I think that's about it for the toolkit. The rest of it is about motivation, about knowing that you're not always going to rush ahead, you're going to reach plateaus, and that's okay. And it's about remembering the core reason why you're learning a language. You're learning a language for your own reasons, but for me at least, it's always about interaction. It's always about understanding culture. It's always about understanding nuances in conversations. I think that's really helping me keep going. Every day I know a little bit more, I understand better, I get a little dopamine rush every time I catch a slang term or some data terminology that I understand. And I think the moment you understand what your inner motivation is, then you have all the tools at your disposal. And I wish you best of luck. This has been Language Bits. See you next time.